Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for stopping right here on my space today. I share so entire videos and pattern drafting right here on my channel. So I'll be quickly sharing with you in today's tutorial how to cut and sew this beautiful off-shoulder wrap top with a V-shaped bell sleeves. So trust me, this is actually one of the simplest top you can ever make, and you can rock it as well with any outfit. It's a bomb. Okay, so I'm talking too much, let's just get started.
A heart speed.
So here are the materials I'll be working with, and I have my ruler and my fabric, which is an African print and is almost 2 yards of fabric. That was a yard and 32 inches. That was what I got. So I'll just get started by drafting a basic bodice. So I drafted this behind the camera, and if you don't know how to go about this, I'll be pinning a link to the tutorial I made on how to draft a half scale basic bodice for you to get this perfectly. So here it is, and I marked out the important lines, and exactly on that point where my armhole is, that is always considered the chest line, I'll just extend that line to make it longer, and I'll label that line my chest line. So my half length here is 17 inches plus 1 inch for my hemming allowance. So I added 1 inch at the side for sewing allowance. So I'm going to consider the neck depth of this my off shoulder, and I'm going to mark 5 inches, just as you can see right here. I'll root that into a straight line, and I'll cut it off from that part.
Chemicals that take us higher. The night's young.
So here now I have this. I'm going to use this and draft out for the back part of my top. So I have my fabric folded into two, and I placed this my drafted basic bodice on it, and I went ahead now to pin this down. So while I was drafting this on my pattern paper, I actually forgot to add half inch for ease and not stitching allowance. I already added a stitching allowance, which is 1 inch. So this one half inch I'm adding is for ease, so that this top doesn't get too tight because it's a wrap top. So while I'm doing this, you really understand where you make yours and wear it. So from that top part, I'm going to mark 1 inch. So this 1 inch is going to serve as the folding allowance from the top part in order to get rid of the rough edges. Okay, so from there I'm going to trace this out exactly the way it is and now cut out. So that is it for the back part, and you know that no zip allowance is added to this because it's a wrap top and it is open in front, so no zip allowance is needed at this point. These are just the only things you need to do. So I'll go ahead and unpin this and separate this pin from my fabric because I'll be using this same pattern paper to cut out from my front part. So here, after cutting, I spread it out for you all to have a better view of what it looks like, and you can see right here. So after cutting out, I have 14 inches, excluding the 5 inches which I already included in this, plus the 1 inch for fold. So right here I'm going to cut out for the front part of my top, and I folded my fabric into two. So watch carefully what I'm going to do. From the folded edge of my fabric, I divided my waist circumference by 4, and I got 8 inches right there. I made that point right there, and I'm going to place this my drafted pattern on exactly that 8 inches line, as you can see right here.
It's just begun as she puts her hand in mine.
So now from the base of my pattern, I'm going to mark 2 inches upward this way. I'll connect it into a straight line using my ruler. So I'll now come to the upper part of this my pattern paper. So from the armhole area, I'm going to come in by at least half of an inch, and I'll make a point right there. So right here now, I'm actually going to alter the shape of this neckline because from the thumbnail you will see clearly that it has this curve in front, even the one I was putting on. So right here I'm just going to show you how to curve this. It's either you maintain your chest line, or from your chest line you can come down by your desired inches, half inch, 1 inch, or so or more. But do remember that the more deeper you go, the more exposed your cleavage is going to be. So if you want to show off your cleavage, you can go on ahead to actually come down by more inches from your chest line. So that was the illustration I was trying to explain right there, and but for me, I maintained my chest line. So from the half inch I marked from my armhole point, I just connected that this way into my chest line. So with my ruler and my chalk, I will now follow the shape of that line just like this, and I'm going to connect this all the way and stop exactly on the 2 inches I came up by from my pattern paper. I hope this is so clear and understandable. So I stopped at the 2 inches. I didn't exceed that 2 inches I came up by from my pattern paper. Okay, so I was also trying to make this very visible in case you don't see it clearly. So I was trying to use my chalk to highlight this properly. So here now I've gone ahead to do this, and I'll still replace that half of an inch I added for my ease at the for the back of my top. So I'll replace it for the front of my top right here, and after that I'll just go ahead and cut off this newly created neckline, and I'm just going to go ahead now and add half of an inch all through on the neckline that will serve as the folding allowance. Yeah, because I'm going to fold this, but if you decide to add a lining to yours, no problem. If you decide to pipe yours, no problem, but I'm going to fold mine. So you can see me marking my half of an inch with my free hand right here, and after that I'll just simply go ahead and cut this out. I cut out the sides and I cut out the armhole area, and the armhole area doesn't need any allowance at all. So for my neckline, for my newly created neckline, I cut this out. So from the 2 inches I came up by from my pattern paper, you can see it's closed, so I went ahead to separate this into 2. So after all of that, you see what I have right here. I remove these pins and spread this out for you all to have a better view of what I've done so far. So this is what it looks like. A bit weird, yes I know, but that doesn't stop us from doing what we want to do. So all I'm going to do now is to get started by folding the neckline area just like this. Remember, I marked about half of an inch, so you can fold in half of an inch or 3/4. So by the time you fold, you stop exactly on the point where the 2 inches started. So you also do the same thing for the back dress, and you fold the top part, that's the neckline part, and that is it. So I folded the front piece and the back piece, and I ironed as well. So this is what I have. In a way, this fabric is looking like a uniform to me, but that's by the way. Actually, I now turn this to the right side facing the camera, and I'm going to place this my front dress and my back dress right sides facing each other, because I'm going to join them at the 2 sides. So I'll pin this down first, making sure that they align on the armhole area and also at the base. So I'll pin for the 2 sides. So please, while pinning, you have to take away this long part on this neckline you have. So you saw that I raised mine and shifted it. Please also do the same thing to yours. Okay, so I gave this 1 inch stitching allowance, which I'm going ahead now to mark, and I'm going to just come to the base of this my top. I'm going to get my half length. So this 5 inches you see above this my fabric is because the neckline I worked with was 5 inches, so I'm trying to get my half length. So you can see I marked my half length there of 16 inches, and from that 16 inches I also marked 1 inch upward this way. So this my allowance I'm marking. I'm going to stitch from my armhole area and stop right there at that point, see me point, and I will now start beneath this 16 inches and now mark my 1 inch. So while stitching, I'm just going to stitch from my armhole up to that point and skip that 1 inch part. So you can see what I mean right here. I have this tiny hole and it's about 1 inch wide. Okay, so I'll basically move over to drafting the sleeve of this my top. So we are done drafting the body and kind of joining. So the next is to draft the sleeve. So you're going to measure a strap to strap, and mine was 5.5 inches, 5 inches plus half inch for joining allowance. Okay, so from that 5.5 inches I'm going to place my top, that's the armhole area, starting from that point. You can see, and I'm just going to use my pen now to trace out this armhole. So I'm not tracing to the end of that including that 1 inch allowance. I just stopped exactly where my body measurement stopped right there. So you can see I didn't exceed that. But another way to get your armhole for an off shoulder is that you subtract the neckline you use, which I'm just showing right here, and mark your armhole length of 8 inches. So whichever way, it is still fine and it is still okay. So I'm going to use my curve rule and my marker now to highlight the curve which I made right there. So this is basically it, and I'm going ahead now to get the length of this my sleeve. So usually my belt sleeves, I love it very long, though this was not really the length I wanted, but I really love my belt sleeve long. So I'm working with a length of 24.5 inches, and for my wrist circumference I have 5 inches right there. I made this point right there, and from my armhole I'm going to connect all the way down to my full sleeve. So after this, now I'll just go ahead and cut out this the exact way I drafted. So after cutting this out, I'm going to place this on my fabric folded into two, okay. So you can see what I have right here, and I started placing this from the edge of my folded fabric. So before I proceed to do anything, I'm just simply going to come to the armhole area, and I'm going to mark 1 inch at that point, and the 1 inch is going to be for my joining or my seam allowance. So you can see what I did right there. So from the hem of my sleeve, I'm going to come out by 6.5 inches. So right here, whatever inches you take right here depends solely on the size of your belt sleeve. So if you want a very full pronounced belt sleeve, you can add more inches to what I added here. So I added I marked 6.5 inches. By the end of the day, I stitched using 1 inch, so you can imagine that it's reduced, right? Yes. So if you want yours pronounced and bigger, you can add more inches, and you can see the way I went ahead to connect this up to that my armhole in this slanty manner. So after that, you can also decide to stop your slant on your elbow, but I didn't just do that. I wanted it to start from my armhole. So for the top part of my sleeve, I went ahead to add 1 inch, which will be for my folding, and I traced out the armhole as well. So I'm going to cut this out exactly the same way it is, so I can draft out for the V-shaped effect on the belt sleeve. So this is like one of the simplest methods for you to use in drafting out your belt sleeve instead of the slashing and the spreading, okay. So I've removed my paper right here now, and from the folded edge of my fabric, I'm just going to come up from that point by 2.5 inches. You can see it right there, and I marked 2.5 inches, and I'm going to use my ruler and now connect it to the other end of my sleeve in this slanty manner. So that is it. That's why I said from the beginning of this tutorial that this top is one of the like most simplest top you can ever make. Within few minutes you will be done, no matter how slow you are. So I went ahead to cut this out, but I didn't add any sewing allowance. This was because, remember, I already told you I was working in 24.5 inches, so the half inches is going to be for my hemming allowance. So after cutting this, I flip this to the front part for you all to see what it looks like right here. So if you want to pipe this or use a facing on this, like, you can go ahead and do that, but for me, I folded everything right here because I'm economizing my fabric, because this is not 2 yards, is about almost 2 yards, okay. So I went ahead to fold the hem and also the top part, and also iron this as well, so you can see what it looks like right here. It's looking beautiful already. I flip to the right side, and I'm going to bring these two together this way. So I'm going to mark 1 inch, and this 1 inch I'm going to stitch all the way to the ends of my sleeve. So guys, I've gone ahead to stitch this down, and you can see we're almost done with this dress. So I'll simply get the top of my top, sorry, and I'll get the armhole area. So I'm going to place this right here now, right side facing each other, and I will get one part of the armhole, and I'm going to place this and make sure that the joinings align. So if you're very calculative with your allowance and everything you are doing is going to align properly, trust me. So I'm just going to stitch this down on that armhole area, and this is what I have. So I'm done with everything. It's just remaining the base of my top. So while stitching, always open up your seam, which I will fold in by 1 inch, as you can see. So after I did that, I cut out this very long piece which will be acting as my belt that I'll be fixing to my top, and it is 3 inches wide. So by the time I fold this into two, I'm going to stitch with about 1/2 inch, and I'm be left with 1 inch afterwards. So I have gone ahead to hem my top and also iron this as well. So I flipped my belt to the wrong side after stitching, and I brought the part, you can see that part right there, I placed it with my belt, and I'm going ahead now to stitch that. So here now you understand the reason for that hole where your belt can pass through. So you're going to fix this, and by the end of the day you can easily pass your belt or your rope round your waist, as you can see right here, without so much disturbance. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.